All right. Welcome, welcome. My name is Cheryl Matthew, and this is a talk called Navigating Aging. We do every week on different topics of aging and having fun as we age. So today's topic is going to be activities to do with our loved ones who have dementia, Alzheimer's. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and open it up to comments, questions, and enjoy our beautiful community. So regarding activities for people who have Alzheimer's and dementia. So Alzheimer's and dementia is a time when people's brains are functioning differently than they used to. Oftentimes the short-term memory is affected first. They can remember a long time ago. It affects everybody a little differently. And so as time goes on, their executive function and their cognition changes, and it affects different parts and abilities with people differently. I've had clients that can drive really well, but they're putting cat food in the coffee maker or getting lost around along the neighborhood. So and some people lose their ability to drive really early on. So we say activities, really to remember the important thing is to gear the activity to the person's retained strength. For example, some people can play cards and for a long time, but some others that are affected with dementia, the numbers don't make sense anymore. So if you're playing, you have to add up numbers or you have to notice that you have 3 8s. They may not be able to do that, but other people can. So part of the trick, challenge, etc., is to be flexible with your approach and find out what can they do. So not only do they feel, the person with dementia, feel like successful, engaged, important, but also there's something for you or the other people to do with them. Some people decide whether to keep their loved one at home or memory care. Part of the beauty of someone going to memory care is that they usually will have an activities director that is trained to a variety of different activities that can keep the person engaged and stimulated with their retained strengths. And that can certainly happen at home. It just takes the person being, rested enough and willing and having the time to do that. It's just a lot to think about new things every day. So it's one of the things that helps in memory care, but also, we're talking about these things so people can be at home doing these things as well. Even if someone is in a memory care community, sometimes if a loved one visits, they're like, well, what do I do with them? They don't really, sometimes they don't recognize their loved one anymore. They don't know what to do. So these are some ideas of things you can do wherever your loved one is. So I'll just put them in two kind of categories. One is activities to do around the house, and then one is activities to keep people moving. As we talked a lot on different weeks, is the importance of moving, keeping active as we age for everybody. It's really important, and especially with people with cognitive impairment, that can really help keep the cognition as good as possible for as long as possible. Moving and also learning new things, two really important things to keep the dementia at a certain level and maintain as long as possible. So activities around the house. One, I'll call it make a memory book. And this could be with pictures or a scrapbook. At the same time, remember that the person's retained strengths matter here. Sometimes people early on will not recognize faces in pictures anymore. And if you go, hey, remember this trip? They'll be like, no, I have no idea. Remember them? And they can't even pick out the person in the picture. So memory books can work, but they don't work for everybody. So I'll just preface that for all of these activities. So use your judgment. There's something to try. And if it doesn't work or if it agitates the person more, then don't do that. Don't do that one. So sometimes if you look at old pictures, it can stir up long-term memories. So dementia, Alzheimer's, their short-term memory is not very good, but their long-term memory can stay intact for a long time. So they may remember what they did for work a long time ago, but they may not remember what they had for lunch an hour ago. When I worked so I've been a geriatric care manager for over 20 years. Most of my clients had dementia. So I worked in hospital discharge planning, hospice, adult daycare for people with dementia, also a memory care community, so where people live there, as well as keeping people at home. So there were some people that, the example here, that there were some people that moved into the assisted living, and I got to know their story. One of the guys, he was a helicopter pilot a long time ago, and that was really important to him. And one of the stories his daughter told me, I would try to collect as much information about the person's story so I could connect with them. One of the stories was at one point he flew this helicopter upside down. Now, he wasn't supposed to do that, but he did it. So when I would talk to him or when I would introduce him to other people there to try to get him engaged, I'd say, hey, this is Jerry. Jerry used to fly helicopters. And you know what? And his kind of face would light up. I'm like, you know what? He even flew one upside down. And his whole face would light up like, oh, yeah, I did that. He didn't know my name. He didn't know where he was. He did not know what he had for lunch 5 minutes ago. But he remembered that he flew this helicopter upside down. And that just brought him so much joy. And you could tell it was just like a part of who he was. And so it was just delightful to be with him in that space where he just lit up. And so in that way, like creating a memory book or scrapbook, maybe that's pictures, maybe that's a book, scrapbook, but maybe it's having their favorite stories readily available for you to talk to about, with each other, or when you introduce them to someone else, have that favorite story ready. Another one is you can water plants. You can fold towels. Now, as I say this, I'm like, this is not for everybody. And again, it's like some people with advanced dementia, like when they can't figure out how to, they may not know the person in the picture, and they may not be safe to make food anymore, but they could water plants and they could fold towels. So just take all these into the stages into consideration. So watering plants, folding towels is a great one, especially for women that are historically, they might have been doing laundry. And so folding towels tends to be kind of meditative, and it's easy. They can feel successful. It doesn't have to be even. My towels today aren't even. You can cook. And the key there is being flexible. You could, if the person used to knit or crochet, that could be something that you do together. You could play with or cuddle different animals. So if the person's a cat person, maybe you have a cat, or you find a cat or a dog, or even they make real feeling stuffed animals these days, or real feeling baby dolls for people who were mothers, just holding that baby can be comforting to them. Dancing, listening to music are fabulous. Sweeping and vacuuming, those some people really like that. Again, can be meditative and productive. Sometimes if people have played instruments in the past, that can work, like piano or guitar, or even sing along with them. So sometimes the music is stored in a different part of our brain that people can access more readily, even though other memories can be going away. Arts and crafts are really good as well. Watercolor, painting, drawing can be a fun activity, and you can actually have a conversation with them while you're doing that. Also, watching a favorite movie can be very fun. You might see that same movie over and over again. One thing I used to enjoy in the memory care, we had a couple that was from Ireland, and so we would have some Ireland or vacation videos, or the videos that are on certain channels, or videos of like travel to Ireland. And so we'd put those on, and they saw them a few times a week, but they loved them every time. It reminded them, like that long-term memory. It reminded them of where they used to live and used to know. So activities to keep people moving. Walks are really great. And sometimes people could wander away, so you got to be careful with walks. Just stay with them. Dancing is typically very good. Dancing and music, again, great for the brain. If the person's used to going to the gym, you could go to the gym, and the stored memories of how you lift weights and make your biceps bigger could be fun for them. Planting flowers, raking leaves, very fun. Stretching, doing yoga, going to a local museum, participating in water aerobics, fun. So those are some ideas. One thing also I've done is have those sentences that are open-ended. It's sort of like a Mad Libs, but I call them would you rather. So if someone, depends on how they can answer, or how, if they're able to communicate in certain ways, if you're able to understand what they're saying, you'd say, like, would you rather fly a helicopter upside down or plant a garden? And so just like two choices, and they could choose one, and sometimes that starts more conversations. But you can go on for a while. People can get pretty engaged with the would you rather game, and it can be kind of fun, and you can make it super silly. So those are some ideas, and I just like to open it up to your input, questions, thoughts, things that have worked or not worked for you all, etc. We're here for you. I see you trying to get off mute there, John.
Hi there.
Okay. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. I'd like to add something to what you've already experienced. I was trained as a creative storyteller. And instead of using pictures and having a memory book from the past, I actually use pictures that have an engagement in the picture, but they're pictures of people that are not relatives. They are unknown subjects and unknown situations. And so in my work with some in an assisted living, I use pictures and we ask what we call the beautiful questions. And the whole theme of this exercise is using imagination and not memory. So we do this to memory. This is not dealing with memory. This is dealing with creative imagination. And so you might have a picture of a man and a woman facing each other, which is one of my popular ones, and another of two dogs in cars facing each other. And then I would ask those questions. Well, what do you think is going on here? And people with dementia, I've had some fun experiences with one lady who in one of the pictures said, well, that's a monkey sitting on the lap of the pilot. And the pilot is a woman and she's flying in Africa. And that monkey needs to pee. So we get the most crazy things. And so at the end of her story, it was that the woman, the pilot, was arrested for stealing monkeys in Africa. And yay, the monkey got to pee, and all he wanted was a bathroom and a roll of toilet paper. Well, I got to tell you, the whole group just broke into laughter. Mm-hmm. And so I've had a lot of success using this, which is a concept that's not mine. It belongs to a woman who's doing wonderful work with this kind of imagination. So I just wanted to share that using the memory book, maybe make a book of interesting pictures, and then one-on-one, you can sit there and say, well, what do you think's going on here? What do you hear? Do you think there's something going on in the background? And well, who do you think, well, what are their names? And what do you, and then after the story sort of materializes, we give it a name, a title to the story. And I've had a lot of success at assisted living facility in Nevada doing that. And I will be doing that here in LA when I get settled.
That's great. Yeah, I know, we're working on it, right? So was this specifically for people with dementia, or just anybody in assisted living? Mix, okay.
And many of them, of course, had early dementia or in mild cognitive impairment, but they definitely were not remembering. And we text.
Yeah, I love memory. That. I love that. I think it was last week we talked about using improv for people with dementia and the yes and exercise. Right. And it sounds like that's exactly what you were doing. Like, what's this? It's a monkey. Yes, and he's eating cake in a car. Right. Yes, and he's going to the moon. Like, it's all okay. And I love that. Like, the goal is just to have fun, engage, connect, right? Have them have a people or reason and a purpose, to connect together. Love that. Thank you.
And the dialogue that you use. Yes. And but yes, and
yes.
Just people and also, I've had a lot of theater background. So when I talk about improv, that sometimes scares people. I don't know what improv is or improvisation. But that's say you're just kind of in the moment and you're just kind of shooting stuff back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much for
and you never know what's to be said sometimes.
I know. Right. That's the fun part.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk more about that. John.
Hey, I turned our camera off. I apologize because the internet was a little weak here at the camper, and or you wouldn't be able to see it anyway, where it gets a little better reception. Anyway, I was just inspired by what Lynn was saying, the X memory thing. And it all, like, as you pointed out, Cheryl, it just dovetails into what we were talking about, what you introduced to us last week, which maybe is the most profound session for us personally, the yes and. Um, I was both simultaneously convicted of my sins and inspired. So it was just like, and that's all said with tongue in cheek, of course, sin being just the sense of separation from God, right? So I, I just, a common theme I know in my sharing. So I'm sorry if it gets to be boring, but it it really is the perfection thing. It's something that in our Tuesday, Saturday things we do with Jeffrey Morgan, seems to be a common theme of like how everything, the karma, whatever it is that's showing up in our life is 100% absolutely not only okay and perfect, but the very, very best thing we can have for our next step. And I just I just found this to be so true um, in what we're working with and dealing with. And like when I'm asked, it's not like they're just comments that I can just smile and say yes to. They're questions. I get asked a lot of questions and I have no idea who the characters are. It's often just pronouns, he, she. And I've stopped saying, well, who is she or who is he? I just go, yeah, and I just, it's like I look at it like, again, like improv, like, well, yeah, that's pretty cool, and yeah, and here's the toilet bill, that we're gonna sit down on, and and but she's looking at me or something. I'm like, well, okay, but it's like so. There's this whole sort of ongoing dialogue, Thanks, Lord. And I I just, but I really do like this thing of like, nothing is broken, nothing is wrong. And in fact, this is amazing. Like my whole theory has been, I say theory, but it's really a deeper intuition that what's going on with us was agreed to. It was perfect for me and perfect for her. And it's for somebody that had the most powerful mind that I had encountered in a lot of ways. Um, it was, to me, the next step to know God and get past something that's inherently attached to the lower worlds called the mind that often blocks soul transcendence. And and I see that demonstrated when I look into that, what I call the face of God countenance, and the eyes that are smiling at me and loving me. And so my encouragement to everyone is just to fully embrace whatever seeming craziness that life brings us as being not only perfect, but because I used to hear JR say that it's all perfect, you don't like it that way, and I thought of it as some form of tolerance, like gritting my teeth and just bearing it until I was freed of it. And now I'm seeing it more as like this amazing gift. And so anyway, I'll stop there. I'm probably just repeating. Thank you. God bless us.
Hey, Jonna, before you go, I'd love to know. So we talked about using improv with our loved ones with dementia. So it sounds like over the last week you used it, and I'm curious how it went. Did it help things go smoother? Was it challenging to kind of break out of your own mind as far as how stories should go and things like that? Love to know your experience.
Well, yeah, Lori just said no, but the thing is that the thing that I was saying or doing, like before we officially got started here this morning when we were all chatting, that was kind of like she seemed to be reacting to, was something that normally makes her laugh, which is why part of why I was sharing it. So that can change. But how it's been working, I think really it's just tied to what I was saying in the bigger picture. It's like one of total acceptance. That acceptance is sensed by her. And I mean, because she's incredibly aware. So it's just like, yeah, it's just like really, so it's not just like a cute thing to say where behind it that maybe just masking underlying irritation that can be sensed, but it's really where I embrace it inside myself. And I'm really in when I say yes and the yes is a real yes of like, yes, what she's doing and saying right now is absolutely perfect for our evolvement and is in fact the key thing that we need right now for our evolvement. So that shift in consciousness inside of me um, is something, I was probably such a what at one point that Lori divorced me. And, you know, when we got slowly over, it took 7 years for my whatever process, which is a long story I won't do now, but it was like what changed is Makeda's godfather said to me, he said, Lori didn't change, you changed. She was just being Lori and you changed. And it was like I began to see the things that I was arguing with and fighting with as being really there for me. And so everything is like that in our interaction. And because of that, it just, life goes smoother. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And I really heard what you said about, so it's yes and, meaning taking what they say and going, yes, like accepting it and going from there and adding on instead of saying no or trying to correct or remind. So yes and.
Yeah,
And
and
what I
me really listening, Cheryl. Like, I'm sorry, I was
Mhm.
interrupting you as I was saying
No,
me really listening,
fine.
but that's
Listening, yeah.
that is like really, and that's that component of embracing. Like, wow, what is this telling me? Which my mind says makes no sense, but what is being communicated to me here? And it's not something I can figure out with my mind. Obviously, it's just going into that place of letting go, relaxing, and receiving whatever gift they're giving to me in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
And
is that
yes, and yes, and uh, I I really heard you talk about that she feels the acceptance when if she says something instead of saying, well, no, that's not right, or you don't remember, or don't you remember, or something like that, or that's not even, those aren't two dogs, those are two monkeys, so instead of correcting, so with the yes and you go into acceptance, you really listen, and when you're in acceptance of the situation, that's not wrong or bad, it just is what it is, and it's perfect. Let go, relax, accept, and she really feels that, and then it can help her. I'll say help her, and sometimes that means the behavior. She could relax. She can feel safe. Did I get you?
Yeah, yeah. And Cheryl, you know what? The image I had as you were feeding it back was, it's like a dance. You know, they're pulling. It's like, like I used to. Lori and I were born March 30th, 1958, 5 hours apart. Needless to say, we have some similar characteristics. And I I just like we would kind of like seem to bump into each other a lot, like two, astrologically two rams, like just locking horns and and I just like so it's like learning how to dance with a partner where both are leading the steps. Like it seems like they're pulling me in a different direction, but I can go with that. And then we sort of move that into a turn and a spiral and we're circling around and we're both going in both directions. One of JR's classic pieces of advice to me, I say classic for myself, was when I was trying to escape the world. I was at a PAT training and I wanted to go away and do SEs all the time instead of whatever it was in the world. And he said, you can do both. So that's it. It's you can do both.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and
Yes, and cool. Thank you so much for sharing your loving and your journey with us. It's really helpful.
yeah. Well,
Both
God,
you and Lori.
I kind of unfortunately cut off. I wanted to hear more what you were saying about your visit to us in Kentucky, but that's just that is a full point of blessings for us.
Yeah, I was before we started the recording, I was telling John I was scrolling through my phone and looking at past videos, and I found the video from 2019. So it was about, I think it was about 5 years ago, where that was the first time, that our group knew that Lori was had dementia. She walked away from the Easter event and was gone for 30 hours. And so then we met and uh, talked about how to make things a little safer around the house. And so I videotaped part of what we were talking about, and I was enjoying hearing Lori just talk about the event and how she was totally fine. Like she had walked, for hours and hours, and she was totally fine when you found her. And yeah, just looking at your journey since then, and John, you really accepting what is and using that for your upliftment and growth in just beautiful ways. And um, going from not really sharing the journey before that to really being very open about it since, um, and open to the universe of the universe, so they can support you and Lori in ways that you may not have ever thought about. And you both have created this amazing life, uh, going to the heart of God, um, in beautiful ways. So thanks for sharing your journey with us. I also was picturing I have an older friend. He was just turning 80. My neighbor passed away about 6 months ago. And when John and Lori needed help, and I drove to Fontana. I don't know, it's like probably 30 or 45 minutes from where I live. And so John wanted to come with me and see how he could help. And we were trying to solve a problem with, like, locking the door and things like that. That he's a handyman and everything. So I got to see him on video yesterday. So I was appreciating him and his help. And when I was reminded that people are here to help us in our journey. And sometimes especially when we get older, sometimes we need help in ways that we haven't before, because we've done it all by ourselves. I can do it myself. And oftentimes, like, we have been the givers in our life. We're the doers and the givers, and all of a sudden we can't do as much. Then it can be a challenge of who am I if I'm not giving? Who am I if I'm not doing? My mother-in-law right now is going through some pain in her body that she's not really able to move as much as she once did. And she is a doer. If she could get up and do, whether it's cooking for people or going to serve at her church, she is doing. And so I'm observing how she's managing this phase in her life, that she's not able to just to jump up and go do. Well, what if I just need to sit here for a little bit? How does that feel? Can we use yes and then? Yes, I'm in pain. And what's the next? How do we fill in that blank, right? Like, yes, and I'm going to complain about it. Or yes, and I'm going to, I don't know, I'm going to try some new things. I'm going to so we're always doing the yes and, but how are we filling in that sentence? So anyway, John, thanks for.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. And one thing I wanted to say about Cheryl is just, one of the things that really helped us, I mean, so much helped us and so much we're using now, that she brought out back in 2019. But it wasn't just her. She had a team of people researching stuff for us. As she said, she brought her neighbor. I mean, what they did in one day was absolutely amazing and life transforming. And they brought all these she brought all this ingenious technology. She'd been working on it for weeks since the Easter event where the 30-hour walk took place. She'd been working on it for quite a while. Maybe it was even 2 months or something. And when she brought it out, she, it was like we used all of it. It was all ingenious and wonderful. And just like technology and all things on the physical, some stuff broke. It just it for whatever in our situation, it didn't hold up. So, but when you give somebody half a dozen different things and two of them become essential parts of your life, that's a huge success. So it's Cheryl's diversity or willingness to try anything and everything and finding those things that will work for you on an ongoing basis. So boy, if you know anybody that needs that, I would really encourage you to get them to contact Cheryl, because I just, I don't know anybody that has her unique package. Not that I'm some expert, but I mean, really, how many high level initiates, that know what she knows. It's just, it's all of it. So God bless Cheryl. Thank you for
Yeah.
these days.
Thank you. Thank you. And I always appreciate your kind words. What we did and what, we're talking about with dementia and Alzheimer's, it's not only engaging them, but it's also problem solving along the way, being creative. And by problem, I mean just a challenge, just something that it's usually around safety. So sometimes it's like, oh, my husband is walking out the door and now he's walking around the neighborhood and he's getting lost. Okay, let's find a solution to that. So if he wants to remain at home so he can be safe. Okay, let's put up a door lock up higher that he doesn't see. Let's put sometimes like it's a paper or fabric that looks like a shelf. So it looks like part of a library bookshelf. That's what I'm saying. A bookshelf in front of the door. So it doesn't even look like a door anymore. It's a book. It looks like a bookshelf. So they're not so interested in going out. I saw the other day somebody with dementia, they kept playing with the thermostat. So it was either really hot, really cold. And so that wasn't working so well. So the person bought a frame and then put something over the frame and then hung the frame over the thermostat. So it's gone. So it's part of the fun for me. It's not so fun. Like I've never had to be a 24/7 caregiver of someone with dementia. I know it's exhausting. I've seen these people. I've assisted these people. So when I say fun, it's like, yeah, the fun, it's, there's times that it's not fun because you're exhausted. But if we look for the fun or look for the good in a situation that we can't really change, part of the fun is finding solutions to things that can improve either our life, our loved one's life, or someone else. And really, like John was mentioning, when you do find solutions, it really can change someone's life. So when we find things, it's fun to share it with other people that are coming behind you or next to you that may have similar challenges. And it's part of the beauty of community that we can share. Like Lynn's idea of the storytelling, it's like beautiful. It's just like, as you're saying that and John saying this, like, yeah, we got to, at times, like, I don't know all the answers. I just know what I know and I add to the mix. But being someone that can just bring these ideas together, and then, because sometimes it takes 50 ideas for it to work for one person. But if you have 50, then you can find the one. So that's part of the beauty of community and sharing all these gifts. Anybody else want to share? Peggy.
It's interesting hearing your presentation today and what everyone else is sharing. What comes to me in my own personal experience with folks who are having memory issues is I see that I had a mindset that, well, if the person's in a level of dementia, I don't want to say that they're stuck there, but that it had not occurred to me to bring these types of enrichments, like the imagination exercise and exercise and simple things like that, because they're very present where they are, and I see that there's a whole lot of joy in their lives still to be had. It just looks like it's accessed differently and bringing them out. And for me, it's loving the person where they are, no matter where that is. And at the same time, I really love everyone's ideas, because that gives me something now to remember. Yeah. So thank you all.
Thank you, Peggy. Yes, loving them where they're at. Yes, exactly. And the other thing is that, like, some people, many people, just like to sit on a sofa, or either stand, sit, walk, and hold your hand. Like, that loving connection is really important. Sometimes it can be overstimulating to people, just like it is to anybody. But if we're sensitive to that, do they need some time alone? Do they need some companion time? So just holding hands and breathing together. Maybe it's sitting there listening to music or a movie, or talking about nothing, or monkeys flying, or whatever. But that loving connection is really important. Thanks. Nancy.
Well, greetings, everybody. Sorry, I've been among the missing in the last few weeks. Happy to be here. I wanted to add to the storytelling concept a little. I'm certainly in accordance with that. As a psychotherapist myself, I was trained in psychosynthesis, which uses, I'll call it storytelling, as a diagnostic and treatment technique also. So that's going, I think, too far in a clinical direction for our purposes. But it occurred to me to share that in my experience, people are not, people with dementia are not, as far as they're concerned, speaking gibberish. It's purposeful and meaningful in some way. And if we listen carefully, there are clues in there as to, I was hearing clues about the monkey and the toilet paper and so forth, would be an example of where they're at in this moment. And so it's informational for us as caregivers, as well as using expression and what's going on for them in the immediate moment for the people that we're working with. So I think that's all I want to say about that. But well, there's one more thing, and that is, no matter what we're working with in the imagination, one can talk to that. So one can talk to a leaf, or a stone, or a tree, or another person, or a monkey, or whatever happens to be, toilet paper, whatever happens to be in the air, we can find out information about those things and the meaningfulness. Sometimes we can get the meaningfulness that toilet paper, say, has for the person making that expression. It's kind of fun to work with that, with the imagination in that way, because the imagination in a way, accepts everything as being available right now to connect with. So it's just a cool approach. I'm glad you brought it up
Mhm.
as a technique. That's it for me.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're
And
welcome.
yes, and that, yes, and find out how many times a day I say that. That leads into, this whole other area, which I see, like, we start with a topic and then it just leads to, multidimensional aspects of this. But it reminds me of, so there's a woman that's one of the top names in dementia care. Her name is Naomi Feil, Feil, I believe, and she has the validation technique. And she's probably around 90 years old now. She grew up working in nursing homes. And she noticed that sometimes when people were having behavioral challenges, well, that it always meant something, that the person was trying to say something. So not to just blow it off like, oh, it's just Margie screaming, home, home, home. It's like, oh, so how can we be with Margie? What is she trying to say to us? And sometimes it was trying to heal past memories. And, her technique is about validation. And it's different than regular therapy, right? So the person's not going to be able to necessarily have a conversation with you. Oh, how do you feel about that? I feel sad, back and forth, right? But sometimes if we use words that, oh, you might be feeling sad, or does that make you feel sad, or give them some options just to get the flow going and to validate who they are, that they're trying to tell you something, and to be really like a minister, holding the light for them as they work on completing their lessons in karma and past wounds and things like that. So yes, in that way, everything is they're saying is purposeful and using the imagination like a therapist would maybe for children, like, hey, draw a picture of your house and draw a picture of your mom and dad. It's like, and your siblings. It's like, why is your dad 17 feet tall and your mother's a foot tall, right? In the picture, like, oh, let's talk about that. So similar to as a child, you're not necessarily going direct to the, maybe to the heart of the matter as you would a person in middle age who's healthy and cognitively okay. But there's a way to, to bridge that imagination. And sometimes it is with art that brings that forward. And yeah, good stuff.
Cheryl, it's Nancy again. If I can interject one more thing. I have 2 paintings in my room here that were done by somebody with extreme dementia. Somebody we know or knew who's passed along, but a beautiful artist, and she never lost her artistic ability. And so, who knows, if given the opportunity, what people can achieve or how they can entertain themselves or something like that. I'm grateful to have her work with me. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dance. All right, anybody else before we end for today? What a lovely unraveling. It's exciting. Just like in dementia care, I never quite know where it's going to go. You set off like the north, like activities. And then here we come to this beautiful hour together tapestry of our experiences and loving hearts. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope to see you again in the future, Tuesday at noons Pacific time. See you around the bend.
Thanks, Cheryl.
You're welcome. Love you.
Love you too.